welcome back to another fantastic episode of Talking the PS, your weekly PlayStation show where we round up all of the juicy PlayStation news for your listening or viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games, and also available up there in the digital clouds on your podcast preference of choice. You're joining me this week, Chris, alongside my two fantastic co-hosts returning once again, all of us on the same show for the first time. Man of many pixels, Mr. Richie, welcome back.
Hello, everyone.
And below him, our chaotic neutral, Rob, welcome back.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
It's been some time. It feels weird that we've almost been like passing ships. We've done shows with two of us, but not the three of us for nearly 3 weeks now. So welcome one, welcome all.
We did Minecraft.
Oh, yeah, we've been together. We've seen people. We've actually seen each other in real life a couple of times. It's just in the virtual world, for our viewers and listeners out there, we are all still friends, and we're still here to talk about all of the PlayStation news for this week. With a couple of beers, we're recording on a Saturday evening, so the shows, although they'll be going live out of order, it'll be interesting to see which order of drunkenness we're in as we get through the shows, because they go up differently. Well, so we might be absolutely pissed and then down to relatively sober, then tipsy in a middle show. Who knows? It's all the chaos and fun we have here on Talking the PS.
I think most people are aware at this point that we do tend to record Talking the PS before XPass.
Yeah, so that might be a bit messy, but we'll see how we get to that one. We have a great show lined up for you all, talking about this month's PlayStation Plus games for the month of May. Jedi Survivor reviews, PlayStation 5 selling like hotcakes, destroying all records under the sun, and a lot more. But before we do get all into it, we have to thank our lovely viewers and listeners out there for us hitting some records, gentlemen. The past week, we crossed over the 250,000 views mark over on the old YouTube channel. That's a lot. That's a big. It's not the biggest milestone, but 250,000's quite a sizable number. 3.5 years of hard work and graft, and we have all of our viewers out there to thank for that. We also passed the 50,000 plus podcast downloads. So all of you fine folks out there listening on audio feeds who love a good bit of ASMR out there, thank you for listening on your commutes. 750 videos, gents, up on the channel already at this point. So we're coming up on that 1,000 videos. And we've done this for 187 weeks in a row consistently. We've had a show out every single week, not a break, not a pause. Everything's happened. Celebrities have died. Wars have been started, not over the show.
Which is not our fault.
Not our fault. There might be an alternate universe where the smallest butterfly flaps its wings and we cause something. But we're just a humble podcast here talking about video games. And we just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has tuned in across all platforms, all social media and stuff, and interact with our content over the years. Because, it's ticking away quite nicely. And 250,000, a 250,000, is nothing to be shunned at, I don't think. So thank you, one and all. And of course, a special shout out to our wonderful Helix Heroes, the 50 plus members of the channel who support us that extra little bit further. If you're one of those people, those lurkers in the background who've been watching us for many weeks, why not click join? Join us, become part of our exclusive membership club with stickers, badges next to your name, and access to this very show early, and quite possibly another show, because we're going to be launching the Luna Listening Podcast, our Amazon Luna Cloud Podcast, this very week.
It's not a tease this time.
It's not a tease this time. We're actually recording it again, possibly a lot drunker after this show, but we'll get into all that. Gentlemen, we always start these shows by catching up a little bit about what we've been up to and what we've been playing. So without getting into the news of one of the main topics of the weeks, I have a suspicious feeling I know what we've been playing. But Richie, we'll start with you. What have you been playing the last 7 days?
I haven't been playing one of the main topics of this show, actually. I do intend to play it, but it's not a day one purchase for me at the moment for other reasons. But it's just been chipping away at Octopath. It's so big of a game. Like,
how many hours deep?
My save file's saying over 70. I suspect the real number is closer to 60, but that's still a significant outlay in time when I haven't rolled credits. I don't feel like I'm close to rolling credits.
Ooh. How of the 6 or 8 October? Why did I say 6? Out of the 8 timeline stories you're on, how many have came to full, like, kind of final points yet, or are you still do they all just branch out and then do what they want to, or do you not even know?
0. I haven't completed any of them. They're all split into chapters, but like each chapter kind of has a recommended level, so I'm constantly bouncing between them all, so I'm progressing them all at the same time rather than focusing on one to the end and the next one to the end.
Wow.
So yeah, most of my character, I think I'm on pretty much chapter 4 for every character. Plus, I've done a handful of side quests and all sorts of stuff like that.
Enjoying it though.
I am.
Thoroughly
Still
enjoying
very
it.
much
Fantastic.
enjoying
Has it eclipsed the first game yet? Or are they on par with each other? Is the second one supersede it in big ways?
I think technically, Octopath 2 is a better game than Octopath 1.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think it really comes down to personal preference on the stories. Some stories are better than others, and it's just down to personal preference. I'm not sure which game I personally prefer in terms of stories.
Mm.
I think because there's effectively 8 main storylines in each game, it's kind of a mix. Like, my recommendation would be actually if someone's interested in Octopath, I would look at Octopath 1 now rather than 2, just because I think you can get it cheaper.
Oh,
And then
undoubtedly.
if you're kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if this game's for me, go for 1. You'll be able to pick it up cheaper and then play through it. And then if you do enjoy it, then you can go on for 2 later.
So, would you say at this point, having probably, and eventually by the time you finish both these games, you're probably talking about 200 plus hours combined?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Easily.
I've got over 100 hours in Octopath 1.
Would you say this is a franchise for Square Enix that's going to just go long into the future then? Can you see a world where we get an Octopath 3, 4, 5? Because it seems to be kind of ticking all the boxes on, from your opinion and from what I'm seeing out there in the wild, they've hit the nail on the head with this franchise, as ridiculous as the name is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stupid name and convention, but it now has the name convention actually has staying power.
It does, yeah.
It works in terms of a branding thing, even if you think, oh, God, that's a weird name, but it does work. I think the answer is yes, as long as they don't overdo it. If there's maybe 4 or 5 years between each game, so like there's enough time for people to kind of get to that point and go, oh, I fancy playing something like that again. Oh, the next one's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And because Octopath 2 isn't a direct sequel to Octopath 1, it is like he's 8 new characters, he's an entire new world to effectively explore. We've changed up how some of the classes work. The next game you don't have to have played the previous ones to play the next one. So it's almost like they've got almost like a clean slate when it comes to Octopath 3.
That's the same Final Fantasy approach then.
Yeah, but they also could, if they wanted to, continue characters from the previous games. They could do, for an Octopath 3, take some of the more favoured characters from Octopath 1 and 2 and work them into the plot of 3 if they wanted to. They can do anything they want, really.
And
yeah, format basically works.
Fantastic. And did you play Triangle Strategy, the other fantastic naming convention that came out last spring, I think it was?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
That's more of a kind of
a tactical one.
Tactical ones, which I've never really sunk my teeth into. Like things like Fire Emblem, I've never played. So it was on my radar. I did play a bit of the demo, and then I just never picked it up.
Interesting. Well, and that's another shape out there for you to potentially check out then. Rob, how about yourself? What have you been playing these past 7 days?
Well, I think the first half of the week was all Age of Empires 2. As I alluded to on the stream last night with Richie, I'm getting back into that game in preparation for the multiplayer stream we all do together, because I take it way too seriously and I can't lose to you two. So
Which is why we're going to be playing Age of Empires 3 instead.
Right, surprise. So yes, you two went and streamed on this past Friday Command & Conquer Red Alert 2 Yuri's Revenge, in particular, the expansion.
Revenge, yes.
And you seem to be having a bit of fun, got carried away, and Tanya died from what I saw.
Don't remind me of this, right? It's been less than 24 hours, and it's not been enough time to truly.
The wounds haven't healed.
No, especially Tanya's. They're nowhere close to healing.
Yeah, I do love a good bit of. They really did. I saw her absolutely clearing shop on the base, thinking I forgot how overpowered she was to some degree, and then she got killed, and I was like, oh well, maybe not. She's just wearing a tank top and some shorts, so no surprise she's easy to take down in reality. But yeah, that video is up now on the channel. Something different, of course. One of the things we wanted to do on this channel for a while is, once we broke away from cloud gaming, is just dabble in anything and everything. And like, there's so many retro games that I want to play and check out, and it is just like finding the time. I think we will get there eventually. I purchased about 10 old James Bond games at some point to get around to, but then I had a child, so priorities shift a little bit. So if there's anything that you do want to recommend, do let us know in the comments or on our Discord server if there's anything you want to see specifically on the channel. Older games, more than welcome here, but as we said, yeah, Age of Empires, we will be getting to at some point. We really enjoyed playing Minecraft Legends the week before. This week, we should probably mention the live stream for this week will no doubt be Redfall. It launches this Tuesday, so we'll probably be checking that out. And it is Star Wars Day on May the 4th, so that we may or not do a Star Wars thing depending on work schedules and what we're up to as well. But Rob, the second half of the week, speaking of May the 4th.
Yeah, second half of the week has been Jedi Survivor. Immediately went off stream last night and sunk a couple of hours into it. Did a few more today. Without getting into it, absolutely loving it so far.
I literally got a text from Rob's girlfriend saying, "Can you end the stream, please? Rob needs to play Jedi Survivor."
Yeah, I did, and I wasn't even on the stream. I was like, "It's not me. It's got nothing to do with me."
I responded like, "I'm literally not in control of the stream. Like, Rob's the one hosting."
That's what happens.
The crazy thing is, so she's watched me do the first few hours last night on. Is it Jedi Knight, which is
like the middle, yeah,
yeah, like just the default kind of setting. And now she's started on story mode because she's terrible at that type of combat system, by her own admission. So she's now playing through her save file as we record this, and wants me to continue playing the game once we've done recording. So there's going to be a lot of Jedi Survivor consumed in this household over the next couple of weeks, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, of course, being big Star Wars fans, this is kind of what we've all been waiting for. This was at the beginning of the year, this was the only thing on my radar for 2023. We know Spider-Man 2 is rumoured to be coming out in the autumn time, but realistically, this was the only thing that was shoo-in. Although it did get delayed a little bit, we knew it was coming out in the April time, and it's finally here. We knew we were going to be guaranteed, a 20, 30-hour experience that was very third-person, action-oriented, and it was going to feed into the lore, because I think that's the best thing with these Star Wars titles, Fallen Order previously, is that it was made canon in that Disney reboot universe and the restructure. So anything we see, any characters we see from the TV shows, the movies, in the game, they all exist in that world. And I can't wait. I have a sneaky suspicion there's going to be a cameo within the game that's then going to cross over to the TV series that's upcoming, because Ahsoka comes out imminently. Yeah. And I'm hoping for it. Because those who did play the first one will know there was quite a big cameo at the end of the first game, let's say. So Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, we'll probably get into. So enjoying it so far then, Rob, thoroughly?
Fantastic. The combat's been kind of refined a little bit, and you've got some kind of really brutal finishes in there kind of for some enemy types. I'm not going to class this as a spoiler, but you get to fight kind of the old Trade Federation type of droids.
They've been in a lot of the previews, so I think that's fair game.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? And that's just fun seeing kind of that going on. For anybody who hasn't seen the trailer with Mark Hamill as well,
the advert,
it's a fantastic little trailer with him and the voice actor whose name I've forgotten.
Cameron Monaghan.
Cameron Monaghan, yes. Lovely little trailer, and it's just a really, really slick game.
Yeah,
and I obviously excluding PC, but
we'll get into that. We'll get into all that. Well, this is a PlayStation podcast, so we can mock those PC fools out there. I joke, of course. Yes, I've dabbled. My first look is actually up on the channel now. When this show goes live, it went up on Saturday, and I played the first. I'd say up till what is the first kind of boss experience moment. You end up in a meat factory, is all I'm going to say. It's the kind of the crux of it all. That's not really spoiler free, but you end up in a meat factory, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. What I've played so far, I was fully intending it was one of those classic things where it came first thing. Thank you, Amazon. It arrived like 11 o'clock on the morning, so it was like, yes, it's nice and early. I'm not like dithering around at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, thinking where the hell is this delivery guy? Came, plugged it in, put it into my PS5 disc version, and of course there was like a 100+ gig download size, I think day one patch and stuff, which I know a lot of the reviewers who previewed the game had loads of issues with bugs and stuff. However, we're not previewing it, we buy it just like general public members, so no problems after that day one patch, but it took forever. It was like 3 hours to install, don't know what the hell my internet's doing, but it was painful. Even though I was at work, so couldn't play it. It was having it on there, observing this slow ticker, methodically work its way through. And
that probably made it feel worse because you're busy working and you could see it. You were paying attention to it.
Yeah, I couldn't play it instantly though, so it did kind of make sticking to work a little bit easier. Finally, intended to get around to it last night. I didn't. It was an anniversary, so I had to go out for a meal and stuff, and all those other responsibilities. I know.
How tragic of you, Chris.
I think I made the right choice.
Major milestone.
I made the right choice. And so then I thought I'll get around to it today. Wife took the baby out to see her family, and I slept in like a fool. I stayed in bed rather than getting up. So then I finally got around to it, did the first look, and then had to go and shop and feed the baby and other things like that. So I've like I said, I've only put probably 2 hours in so far, but I'm itching to get back to it tonight. So that's my plan after we've recorded these shows for as little time as I can. It's a bank holiday weekend, so hey, I'll get a little bit of time to jump into it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the news. Of course, like I said, PC version not running so hot for Jedi Survivor. But before we get into all that, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all of our content. But let's get into the news. So Rob, if you could introduce us to the
do you mean the properly prepared PlayStation Cruising Points, also known as the news?
I do. The news. A couple of good stories this week. Very positive over in the PlayStation house after the Xbox news, which we talked about yesterday on XPass. I'm sure everything's not looking so rosy over on that show when we get round to it. But we're here to talk about PlayStation, and we're going to kick things off with your PlayStation Plus claimable games for the month of May. We had a blog post coming out from PlayStation earlier this week to mention the 3 titles. First up, we have Grid Legends coming on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Welcome to Grid Legends, a high-stakes driving experience that combines thrilling and unpredictable motorsport, incredible race variety, and an immense narrative that puts you at the heart of the action. Take the spotlight in an engrossing racing story brought to life by world-class cast, including a name I can't pronounce, and a groundbreaking extended reality production. Face fierce personalities, paddock politics, on-track drama, and infamous Raven West motorsport, as a fly-on-the-wall documentary captures every moment. Richie, we've played some Grid back in the day on the channel. We've all dabbled a little bit. Rob, you've played Grid with us as well, right? I think Grid, one of them.
Not with you guys.
Rally, Dirt 5. There was one racing game I feel like you did with us.
Maybe I have.
You played Wreckfest with us.
Wreckfest, that was another one that I forgot to mention. Grid Legends, of course, not too long actually. I think it came out last year, so it's quite a recent title to launch. Bit of a story. They've gone down the EA Need for Speed route and trying to emphasise this different take on it by putting it into kind of like a docu-series where you're always behind the camera seeing all the rivalry go on, I guess. Grid Legends probably the biggest tentpole of these 3 titles before we get into the rest of them, I would say. This one do anything for you guys? I know we're not the biggest racing fans collectively. Good get?
I think objectively, yes.
It is, but it's also not for me. It's again, if you're a long-term fan of this channel, you know my views on racing games. I do technically enjoy them. I'm terrible, so I get frustrated, and they're not games I naturally gravitate towards outside of when we're streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine us streaming this game at some point in May. I think that's a reasonable shout, but I'm probably not going to play outside of that.
Yeah, it was. This is the first game from Codemasters after the EA acquisition, I believe. So this is the first full-on EA original categorized as them. And it's interesting they didn't just do a Grid 2. It's almost like the legend suggests it's a different take on. Maybe the story counts for that, whereas Grid was predominantly just a racing game. There was no narrative structure to it. So do we think we'll see a Grid 2 or a Grid Legends 2 first in any order? Because obviously they bought Codemasters for the IP as well as the production studio.
I don't know. I don't know how well it sold, to be honest. If it sold well, then absolutely. But again, this was something that was in works with Codemaster, then EA bought them, so they might be looking to retool like the lineup there. So it really depends, because they'll be looking at. I imagine EA under Codemaster and EA is going to be looking through their general catalog of like the IP they own, and kind of go like, what are the tentpole like verticals and that, and focus on that. Is Grid one of them? I genuinely don't know.
I would have thought it fits in quite nicely. It gives them a bit of variety, doesn't it? We always think there's maybe one that's on the chopping block. Like how many racing games that are so similar can you have? And I definitely think Grid's maybe further down that pipeline. I always think of like Need for Speed as their big top pillar one, but now they have all the other things in house like Formula One and Dirt. It's you would think one of them maybe has to give. I guess we'll see.
All have their own like unique identity and can coexist as long as they're not coming out like at the same time getting each other's way. Then I don't doesn't necessarily need to cut them. It just again, this is just EA needing to look through their library of IP and go what makes sense and what doesn't.
Indeed. I'll tell you what else makes sense, though. The second game that's on the list, which I know Rob absolutely loves, Chivalry 2 for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Return to the medieval battlefield in this multiplayer first-person slasher inspired by epic medieval movie battles. Players are thrust into the action of every iconic moment of the era, experience large-scale conflicts in sprawling medieval environments ranging from tournament to ground full-scale castle sieges. Pick your playstyle with 4 classes and 12 subclasses, each with their own unique weapons and abilities, and charge headfirst into stunning 64-player cinematic battles, where apparently the PS5 version runs at 4K 60. That's an odd thing to add at the end of that blurb, but it's in there anyway. Rob, you're our Chivalry 2 expert. There's a first look up on the channel where we dove in and you showed us the ropes. This is a good get for you, right?
Oh, 100%. Not only that, I think it's a good get for the game itself, because we saw a big boost when it came to Game Pass, like in the community. And to be honest, it was a bit of like noob fodder because you could just really pump up your stats as an experienced player. And it's kind of benefited ever since. And I think this is going to do the same thing. And with these kind of big, like large scale multiplayer games, you do need that continual injection into the community. And I think this is going to do it for it. I don't imagine it's going to be one like you play much, Chris.
No, my frustrations are clear in our first look when it comes to this game. I think the live, die, repeat mantra echoed very, very strongly for both me and Richie, I think, too. I think Richie had a better handle than I had, or either just a bit more patience.
Yeah.
But you're completely right.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for what I played, but I'm not drawn to multiplayer titles in my spare time, so
it's the most accurate portrayal of like medieval combat, which is just run in, if you're lucky, kill somebody, and then immediately get killed and rinse and repeat. That's just medieval accuracy, I think.
Yeah.
Through and through. Did you ever play For Honor from Ubisoft then?
I actually didn't. I know it gets the comparisons like within the community get done about a lot, but it's a game I never actually played. I don't really know why.
Yeah, that's from what you've described, what you enjoy of this game. That in my mind is almost like a 1-for-1 model, except for you've got the different it's not focused specifically on medieval. It's got samurai class. You can play as soldier, foot soldier. Basically, every era of warfare, there's a version of them within the game. And For Honor is one of those Ubisoft games that quietly does amazingly well behind the scenes. Like Rainbow Six Siege, it just perpetually gets season passes and content, and it has that community you speak of, where it gets like little boosts every now and again when there's a pass or some new cosmetics drop, and it just ticks over in the background surprisingly well for Ubisoft.
And it never came to Stadia. It was like the only Ubisoft game that never came to Stadia.
It was always rumored, but it never arrived. Rounding out the 3 games for May that you can claim, the final one is Descenders. Descenders is a fast-paced, extreme downhill biking game that's easy to pick up but difficult to master, featuring an in-depth physics system that lets you control every subtle movement of your rider, take on different jumps, slopes, and hill bombs, whatever the hell that is, every time you play, with procedurally generated levels and special mutators each time you play, and work out which abilities work best for your riding style, new bikes and threads to build your online rep system. This looks very similar to another Ubisoft game, Trials Fusion, Trials Rising, whichever version of Trials you want to talk about. The title, when I saw it in the list, Descenders, I'd never actually heard of it before. It is only the PlayStation 4 version we get, but the name did not suggest to me like a BMX competition game at all. And then watching the trailer, I was like, it's not what I expected.
It's a roguelike as well.
It sounds like a space horror type of game for me. So for some reason, I don't know why. It's like the Descenders are like you have to go down to like a pit or something like that, like a Red Faction type space pit. But no, not
extreme procedural free riding, whatever that means.
It's a downhill mountain biking roguelike.
Rogue bike.
It's a rogue bike game. There we go. New genre for you guys.
Sold. It's obviously the objectively the lesser of the titles. It's one that I probably wouldn't even play. It's not for me.
I think
It
there's probably
doesn't.
some fun to be had in this game, to be honest. If it's like if you're into like the extreme sports stuff, if you're a mountain biking fan, it does look decent.
It probably has its niche.
Yeah,
but
it's
just
a
not
niche
me.
game. Yeah.
Absolutely. So they're your 3 games for the month of May to go claim now. If you're on any of the tiers, I believe you can claim these games. And Pilly Boots, I think over the board, there's nothing really that's wow. There's no like kind of big AAA get in there. Like Grid Legends has its thing, but it's probably a quieter month compared to previous.
It is. But I think I've said this before, but I think PlayStation Plus can almost afford to have a weaker like monthly games if the mid-month drop is strong enough.
I always think when they look at the calendar of releases as well, like knowing fine well that Star Wars Jedi Survivor is coming out this month, it's almost like you might as well take your foot off the gas a little bit because people are going to be clamoring to actively buy that game. Yeah. They know it's probably going to be a 34-hour title, so rather than drop another thing that maybe would compete with Star Wars a little bit, you might as well just use this as a burner month and just get what titles you can do, but then wow us again maybe in June or July when there's a quieter dip where we don't have as many first party or big AAA games coming out. So interesting reading of the tea leaves from some Sony PlayStation there. Moving on though, next story of the week we always were going to talk about, but Jedi Survivor is finally here. No spoilers on the show, but we want to do a quick review roundup for Jedi Survivor, of course, released on multiple platforms, PC, PS5 and Xbox X and S. No last gen releases for this game, so it's fully embracing next gen. We've got GameSpot give it an 8 out of 10. Survivor builds on Fallen Order in several meaningful ways, tightening up the combat mechanics, expanding the variety of lightsaber styles, elevating the frustration of platforming and puzzles, and digging into less mainstream Star Wars lore to tell fantastic stories about a Jedi trying to defeat tyrannical evil at all costs. NME, VCG, all give it 5 out of 5. Game Informer, 9.25 out of 10. Very specific from Game Informer there. IGN, 9 out of 10. With a new set of larger, more diverse and densely packed worlds to explore and a memorable cast of returning characters, Survivor tells a story that may be predictable, but is fun and at times emotional to watch play out. Launch performance issues aside, it's a sequel that does virtually everything better than the original, which was already an exceptional Star Wars game. If Respawn make one more like this, it'll complete the best Star Wars trilogy in 30 years, hands down. 9 out of 10 from Destructoid, 8 out of 10 from PC Games, and The Gamer gives it 3.5 out of 5. So overall, gentlemen, smashing it out the park. Definitely a contender for Game of the Year conversation. It seems like Respawn done it again, and I guess we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but Rob, you've delved into this the most out of us. Would you agree with all those review roundups from what you've played so far?
Yeah, apart from The Gamer, apparently 3.5 is a bit harsh for it, but whatever. Yeah, I think like it was summed up perfectly. The first game was an exceptionally strong title, and I think they've done the kind of Assassin's Creed 2 trick where they've iterated on the kind of perhaps more shallow areas of the game. Like there was a mention of like the maps being a bit empty and stuff like that's better. The customization of your lightsaber and
your poncho, yeah, boy.
Yeah,
you can customize your beard now, can't you?
You can, yeah. You can go clean shave, and his hair, which I've not found anything for it yet. But yeah, let's give Cal some crazy outfits.
Yeah, so like the outfits, like customization's great. Again, enemy types are a bit more varied now as well, and it is just the next kind of evolution of the Jedi titles, I guess, and it's doing everything I wanted it to. And the story is solid so far.
It sounds like it's everything that you'd hope it would be. It's like, okay, we've addressed some of the issues with the last game. We're telling a new story, continuation of Cal's story, and we're just improving everything across the board in that little bit or significantly. So, like, if you enjoyed the last one, you'll come in, you enjoy this one. It sounds like they've done everything right, to be honest.
Yeah, and one thing to highlight, which I don't think was mentioned in the review summary there, is how well they've integrated your kind of like a duo combat system, because again, without going in spoilers, you kind of have a companion for a good chunk of the first kind of act if you want, and the kind of combo finishes and the kind of flowing combat is just done really well. So yeah,
Yeah,
all thumbs up from me.
it does. It seems from what I've played so far and what I've seen in the previews, it just, what you said there to Assassin's Creed, it just elevated everything that they did right. And Star Wars in itself, we've seen over the years since we grew up and with the variety of games we've played, it lends itself so well to video games. It has crazy worlds, plenty of space aliens to hack down without feeling guilty about it. It's got magical powers in the Force. It's got all kinds of weapons from swords to blasters, armor, shields, ships, like anything you can possibly want for a video game to make it fun, you have access to with this IP, and they've just nailed it.
The thing is, Star Wars has always straddled the line between fantasy and sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just literally draw on the tropes of both elements of that. But then you can also, we saw in like Rogue One, this is just a war movie that just happens to be set in the Star Wars universe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so ripe for like great storytelling.
Yeah, there was.
And it's an entire
will say as
universe.
well-
You can just keep expanding this as much as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, completely. And the game does benefit from being PlayStation 5 only. Like, I know there was some murmurings of, oh, like, why is it not on last gen? But like, it was 100% the right decision when you see like the performance of it in person. Like, I haven't got like the highest performing TV, and like it still looks beautiful to me. And
Yeah.
I'm used to kind of like ultra high gaming settings on PC as well. So
Yeah, I mean,
good job, team.
I'm at the point where I think we do need to say goodbye to the PS4, and I think that is people just need to accept it. The stock issues are kind of over globally for the most part,
Mhm.
so PS5s are available, and the PS5 came out in November 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We're a couple of years into this lifespan. I mean, I am in a lucky position to be an owner of a PS5, but it's like it's time to stop letting this generation be held back by the previous one.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think to what Rob said, yeah, I did the first look on my PC monitor here, which isn't anything flash, then back over to my 4K TV, and the noticeable difference in I'm playing on quality mode rather than performance mode, because again, the frame rate thing isn't anything that I necessarily bugs me so far. But yeah, thoroughly loving it. And as I've said, back to that world, I do wonder with this game, because the first one was such a success, and as I mentioned, it was all canon, they kind of just got free reign to explore the galaxy essentially now, and they can pull on whichever characters they want to, they can explore whichever planets they want to, and tell their own tale, and to the betterment of the game. The story from the early reviews I've read seems fantastic, like lovely bit of heart. Cal's adventure continues, and I think the IGN review puts it right that if inevitably when EA and Respawn make a third and final kind of game of this trilogy, it'll be the best Star Wars games we've ever had, probably. Like, I enjoyed Force Unleashed, we've enjoyed Empire at War and stuff, and Battlefront back in the day, but for the story, the character, the gameplay, with Rob, what you mentioned about the lightsaber mechanics, it's very similar to Ghost of Tsushima with the stances.
Mm-hmm.
And that just builds into, like, yes, I am a Jedi Knight or Master, depending on which difficulty you play it on when you play this game. And yeah, I can't wait to delve into it. I'll probably touch on it a couple more times in the weeks to come. Where do you stand on picking this up then, Richie? Are you seeing out Octopath and then jumping into it?
I'm seeing out Octopath and seeing where I'm at, but I've mentioned a few shows now already that I am currently in hardcore save up as much money as I can for what is going to be an expensive holiday at the end of June. And it kind of it's come around very quickly, and basically it's not one I've been thinking about for like a year or two and can put money aside for it. It's like, oh, this is an opportunity. Basically came from work. I'm going to Canada for like about 4 days for work, but on the back of that I'm also planning on a holiday to New York, and it just kind of fell into my lap. I was like, oh, there's all the costs and stuff and booking hotels and
So you need that greasy money,
stuff, yeah.
baby, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. It's
Get
like
that.
I'm not.
Would
I
you
don't
consider
have.
the EA Play option?
Yeah,
Because
100%.
do you get it? Yeah. 'Cause
But I'm going to see where I'm at with Octopath first, and then decide. So that's why I'm saying it's a definite pickup for me. It's just when.
Absolutely. It's probably when we've sung its praises and finished it, that's when you're like, right, I'll pick it up. Pick it up then.
I'll probably end up picking up in June.
Yeah, and then it'll go
Another
free.
pay-
It'll go
another
free in July
payday.
on Game Pass, and then I'm like, damn it, it got me. We should point out before we do move on from Jedi Survivor that it is having some technical issues over on PC. Bugs galore. It seems to be the trend now that these games and the developers have probably stretched so thin with multiple systems, last gen included for some games, that PC seems to be the lowest common denominator that just suffers now. We've seen multiple launches, even from like if we think about The Last of Us performed terribly when it first came out. I think Forspoken was horrible on PC at the start of the year. There's a trend developing that PC ports, or not even ports because they're usually based on PC to start with before being refined for console. The Star Wars Jedi Survivor EA team did put out a tweet that, and I'll read from it, and I quote, "We are aware Star Wars Jedi Survivor isn't performing to our standards for a percentage, quite a lot, of our PC players, in particular those with high-end machines or certain specific configurations. For example, players using cutting-edge multi-threaded chipsets designed for Windows 11 were encountering problems on Windows 10 or higher-end GPUs coupled with low-performing CPUs. Also, on unexpected frame loss, rest assured we are working to address these cases quickly." They then go on to talk about PC performance and fixing bugs, and they've committed to fixing it. But I know a couple of people had that kind of similar background with Jedi Fallen Order. When that came out, it had a couple of bugs. I personally didn't really have any that I saw. I know it's obviously on a case-by-case basis. Usually I don't know how the magic, the force, and the code works. But Rob, have you noticed anything really so far? You're playing on PS5 as well.
Not on PlayStation 5. I think with the PC kind of releases, it's like there's naturally going to be less resource directed towards the PC version because it's generally a smaller market. But it's like if you know like the perfect shape of a lock, you can easily make a key to fit that lock. With the PC market being so fragmented with different hardware, different configurations, like it's impossible, or near enough impossible to make the perfect key.
You can't QA test every single combination of PC hardware.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the reason I don't play a lot of day one games on PC, because it just comes with the territory, really, and I've come to accept that. And it sucks, but it'll get fixed.
It is crazy that in a world when the people who spend the most money on the kit are the ones who suffer the most, because they're so far ahead almost of the software and whatever Windows 10, 11 are up to. It's a funny world, because then again, like Macs, like they don't really get games, right? Still to this day, like they don't get ported to Mac. That's a whole operating system unto itself, which, yeah, if you're buying Apple tech, you ain't a gamer really over on there, unless you've got like Apple Arcade or something. But we digress. It's interesting to know that the problems they've addressed, and it's an interesting conversation happening in the industry of, does the game receive lesser scores because it's broken, or does it get a pass because it's Star Wars? And we see this all the time, because I think the common denominator was like Pokemon always infinitely gets a pass for when the games are very, very buggy, and I'm not just talking about Caterpies and Weedles. The last one was absolutely broken to shit for me. I stopped playing it, but it's still got like 10 out of 10s and praise and sold millions and millions, and it's an interesting fine line between, if the brand and the IP is big enough, it almost doesn't matter, because this is going to sell like hotcakes because it's Star Wars.
There's a weird thing where even games that are not live service in some ways are kind of live service, because they continue to get patched and updated throughout usually the lifespan of the game. So if I was to review this game on PC and I got hit with tons of bugs, and it was basically in the sort of bugs that ruin your enjoyment of it, I would hammer it in the review score, because the game needs to ultimately be playable beyond everything else. But I would be open to, in 6 months' time, re-reviewing it if they fix the bugs and go, well, actually, when I first played it, I give it a 3 out of 10 because it was basically unplayable. Now it's 10 out of 10 because it's awesome.
That's fair.
So you kind of need to look at, this is why I kind of like Steam has a kind of an overall review score and a recent review score. So you can see how people like the overall, but you can see how it's doing at the moment as well. I do kind of like that.
That's fair. It's always an interesting one. I listened to a few reviews earlier in this week, kind of before the game released, and the amount of time they spend talking about frame rate and such, and how it's apparently unacceptable. And I know we did a little bit on Redfall, but I wouldn't mark a game that highly down because it can't keep at like a constant 60 FPS. But that's just me in my own personal preferences. But it's an interesting one all the same. But I'm sure Jedi Survivor will no doubt sell tons. And for me, so far, even just like 2 odd hours in, I can see how it's going to be in Game of the Year conversation. And I hope it holds up, because I think Jedi Fallen Order missed out, I believe, by its launch time window. It missed out because of the release date in the late November period. So who knows? Maybe we'll see at the Game Awards.
I still think this game should be delayed by a week. Should have been delayed
to May the 4th.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get a patch that'll fix it out by May the 4th. And moving on, though, one of the things which you will be able to see out there, which this story surprised me this week, PlayStation VR2, we've not really spoke about that much on the show. None of us have the headsets. We've discussed at length. It's
talked about it loads of times.
Yeah, we have, yeah. But none of us have picked one up. We've spoken about the price. What shocked me reading this story, it's been announced that PlayStation VR2 headsets will be stocked in retailers from the 12th of May. The virtual reality device has only been able to be purchased from PlayStation Direct up until this point. I did not know that. I cannot believe this went to market and was not available to pick up in retailers, like physical brick and mortar stores. That's crazy.
I mean, that lends to part of the problems they've had with sales if you're not actually selling it.
It was one of those things that I just would have thought that I would be able to walk into a game or a supermarket that has like a gaming section and pick one up. Like in the UK, like we have Curry's PC World. Like I would have, if you'd have told me, can I go get one from those shops? I would have thought, well, yeah, they're not selling that well. They've probably got a big pile of them. No, they're not readily available. It's interesting. We've chatted a few times on the show in the past about like marketing and physical presence on the high street still being a necessity. We mentioned that with cloud gaming many times back on the Sounds of Stadia podcast. And VR feels like one of those things you physically need to see and try out to sometimes to sell you on it. And the fact that it wasn't available seems crazy to me, that our game retailers and probably over in the US it'd be like GameStop and stuff, you just haven't had them.
Honestly, if I was Sony in some of the bigger retail stores in like major cities and stuff, I'd almost want to have a rep in there with a VR setup.
Like showcasing.
Hands on, showcase it, like get them playing like Horizon on VR. Like you'd have to have disinfectants and stuff, like, but that's why you need a rep. But you remember when you used to go in and they used to have a console setup to kind of like get people hands on and go, this is what you're missing out on.
Yeah, and this goes beyond physical retail as well. This wasn't available on Amazon. You couldn't go on Amazon and just go PSVR 2 and order a headset. It was only PlayStation Direct website. So the biggest logistics delivery company on the planet, you couldn't get it from there. That just, it baffles me.
So here's my theory on this, okay? So I think Sony might have wanted a bigger, like, kind of slice of the enthusiast market who they knew would buy straight away, because then they'll get like the full markup on it instead of having to sell it to retail, which then kind of like they do at wholesale prices and whatever. So that's the only like logical argument. But like in marketing, like one of the 101 things is for a product that doesn't have much like market penetration, you get it everywhere like as quick as you can.
Yeah.
So it seemed maybe like it's a misstep from Sony, because obviously it fell well below kind of projected levels for them. I think it might have just been a misstep from they were originally planning to do it this way, but they should have shifted to get it in stores really. But
I think that's the recurring theme for the first half of this year from Sony, where they've banked everything on PSVR 2 and people went, you know what, it's amazing, but I don't really want it right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so suddenly the first half of the year is just almost being a bust because they've backed this. I think they felt VR is more popular than it actually is.
It's definitely a niche in the industry, but I'm sure on XPass when we talk about the CMA's reasons for not allowing the Activision deal, there was a part in that when they said cloud gaming in the VR market, and the cloud gaming market is a lot smaller than VR, and yet that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So we'll talk about that over on XPass. It's just it's an interesting move, but hopefully now it's out there in the wild. The biggest thing for me, I guess, is when it's available through third-party retailers is sales and discounts. Like Sony give like a recommended retail price, but then like over in here, Curry's PC World game, they can undercut that to sell units. If they think they've got loads in the warehouse, they can shift a few units.
In the warehouse yet? This is the thing. This is where they're probably messed up, because if they put this out to everywhere immediately, all the brick and mortar stores back going, you know what? Their buyers going, we're back in this thing, we're buying loads of it, and suddenly have a warehouse full of stuff and it's not selling. That's when they get the price cuts. Where now they're making smaller orders. Because I don't think they're going to be able to shift as much.
Is that not more telling about the performance of VR, though? If you're in that position where you have to worry about how many units they're going to take, then you're not in a good spot. You want them to take surely as many as you can send them.
So if Rob's right and they've decided they want to keep initially in the first few months a bigger chunk of the pie for themselves, they've effectively shot themselves multiple times in the foot by doing so.
Ouch. That's a sore foot. But you know what? It doesn't matter about VR, because the PlayStation 5 console is selling like hotcakes, so Sony can pretty much just ride this wave. Announced this week as part of the quarterly earnings report, PlayStation 5 sales have passed 38 million after a record-breaking quarter. Reading from the Eurogamer article, that is a record high for a specific quarter of sales in any console in the history of video games. The equivalent sales of consoles last year were 2 million units, so by further comparison, the PlayStation 4's biggest quarter 4 sales were only 3 million, and in this quarter, PS5 has shipped 6.3 million units. That is double the best record quarter 4 for PS4 sales, which we all know how well the PS4 sold, so that's crazy. Adding to last quarter's 7.1 million, it's clear that PlayStation 5 sales are very much on an upward trajectory following the stock shortages since launch. Total PS5 sales after Sony's fiscal year have reached 19.1, clearing its target of 19 million units set by the corporation. This thing just keeps going. I don't know what we're going to talk about on XPass, Richie, but Microsoft reported revenue was down, I believe, year on year, and sales were down on certain consoles, and yet they're out there arguing this Call of Duty front, whereas PlayStation, I feel like, are just quietly over here cranking up business, and now stock's available. You can't, like, these things are flying off the shelves. That's insane numbers.
Yeah.
Even with the price increase. Remember, this thing went up 30 quid a couple of months ago, and it doesn't seem to have deterred anyone.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into this being a record-breaking thing because of the historic stock issues they've had. So a lot of people haven't been able to get their hands on it. So that a lot of the people who've bought it in Q4 that's led to this number are people who have probably been trying to buy it for a year and a half, 2 years almost.
I don't think it's been that bad.
I don't think there were in the UK, but from what I've heard in the US, it was particularly bad. And the literal entire states basically just sold out. It was like you couldn't get your hands on one. So if you've got the money sat there, you're waiting for this console, you want to buy it, and then suddenly stocks are there, they're just going to sell tons all in one go. So I'm not saying, I think it's definitely been selling well. I just think the record-breaking element is because it's just what would have been spread out over 2 years has been condensed a lot.
I do think a lot of it goes down to the fact that Sony have followed through on the promises of getting titles out, though. Like, we've had the God of War Ragnaroks and stuff have really kind of amped things up heading into like Christmas periods as well, when demand for consoles is at its all-time high because children want them for Christmas presents, parents want them for themselves, and as you said, when stock availability is balanced out, it's no surprise.
It's the things to come as well. Even if we don't know specific titles, you know Naughty Dog are going to do something awesome. You know Sucker Punch are going to be doing something awesome. We know there's a Spider-Man game coming. We know there's a Wolverine game coming. These are things in the distance a bit, but they are coming. And when you're buying a console, you're not buying it for just the games that are there now. You're buying into the promise of the games that will come for the lifespan of that console. I think that is maybe the big difference between Sony and Xbox, because PS4 had these games. They had your Horizons, you had your Ghost of Tsushimas, you had your Spider-Mans, you had your God of Wars.
Spider-Mans.
Yeah, your Spider-Mans, actually, yeah, multiple. So you had this promise of this huge, amazing library. You had Bloodborne's going right back to the start throughout the entire lifespan of the console. That's the expectation for PS5. Xbox One didn't necessarily have that to the same level, and are yet to kind of show us stuff of that caliber going forward. So there's the difference in sales right there.
It's that wave of success where we've said time and time again, the games industry is the only industry really where every generation people have the option to flip-flop to the other side, like to switch allegiances to a completely different brand. Like, there's not really many avenues that happens in like the world of technology. You usually just commit to one and go, and yet no matter what library built up, I think Sony did so well in the PS4 generation to get that almost like trust, like gamers trust in the quality assurance that they've just came out swinging straight into PS5, and they've just carried over. Backwards compatibility has helped a lot, and Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, soon to be Spider-Man 2, whatever Naughty Dog's working on. Is we mentioned it on last week's show, Richie, when we broke down all 20 plus studios and what they've got in the pipeline, and the exciting thing is we still don't really know. As frustrating as it is, that promise of quality is almost assured.
It's what Nintendo have been banking on for decades now. That Nintendo seal of approval, recent Pokemon games aside, is kind of this. If it's a Nintendo first party has that sticker, you know it's at least going to be a solid game. Like, that's only achieved that last generation.
I think it's enjoying like quite like a unique moment in gaming history as well, where because of COVID and because of stock issues, you have like a bunch of people who haven't had a chance to own a console yet, but you've also got the massive library of really strong games, which typically by the time like a console gets to this point where it's got a good catalog of games, everyone's already got it because they bought it years ago. But it didn't happen for PlayStation because of those reasons. And
a lot of the best PS4 games have folded into PS Plus as well. So if you're buying a PS5 as your first PlayStation, you have access to, and you've been hearing about all these awesome games on PS4, you have access to them.
Yeah,
And the
well
whole
done, Sony.
Well done indeed. But speaking of top quality sales, we've also had the news this week moving on from hardware sales to software, which makes up 70% of Sony's income. We also had the launch of Dead Island 2. There is a first look up on the channel now as well. Special shout out to PlayOn as well, the community manager over there, who sent us a copy for PlayStation 5 of Dead Island 2. The first look is up on the channel now. I had a good time playing this game, jumping into the first person zombie action adventure. It's sold over 1 million copies, which I think comes as quite a surprise actually. 1 million is obviously no mean feat. We did celebrate 250,000 views at the beginning of this show after all. But in terms of numbers sold, I enjoyed what I played of it. Dead Island 2, is this one that's maybe on your guys' radar for later on, at a later date? I think Jedi Survivor probably took mine and Rob's life for the foreseeable, but 1 million copies is quite good for a small AA production. I think it goes a long way for the Embracer Group, who probably needed a win.
I was expecting to write this off as a game that's going to be dead on arrival, and I'm glad they've proved me wrong.
Yeah,
you've played it, Chris. What's your impressions?
I enjoyed it. Graphically, looks really fun. There was no bugs or glitches or anything in my first hour or so of playing it. The story was as you'd expect from this, but it was a marked step up from what I experienced with the Saints Row reboot at back end of last year, which was, I think, my worry. It has that almost like AA stink on it, where it's not going to quite hit the standards that you expect. So you almost subconsciously do just write it off with it's got a cheesy storyline, lots of chaos. But you know what? From what I played, I enjoyed it. It was basically Far Cry with zombies, and I'm a big Far Cry fan, so I enjoyed what I played. I enjoyed the weapons. I had a katana for the first kind of half an hour, which made me feel like a bit of a boss. Some of the kills are brutal. And the world of LA/Hella, it's interesting, but games seem to generally do a little bit better when they have that kind of sunny climate. It's really weird, but I've enjoyed the Far Cry games that take place in sunny environments.
I hate desert levels.
More than that. So like anything like kind of tropical with a bit of like colour popping, it just makes it feel more fun. I don't know whether it's just like, everyone likes a sunny day. Everyone prefers the summer, really. It's got that kind of vibe, and it was fun.
Psychological things like, you know what, I'd like to be in this place where if you see just a desert, it's like sand.
So 1 million, and again, brave decision for Dead Island probably not to go like Game Pass route or something. It was one of those games that's almost like it's begging to be on a subscription model, I think, but they've stuck to their guns. 1 million sold. Congratulations to Dan Buster Studios, Deep Silver, and Embracer.
I'm guessing. I think I just needed to straight up and say I think I completely misinterpreted how well this game does. I genuinely thought this was going to come out and no one would care. But 1 million people have cared enough to get it, and it seems to be reviewing okay as well. So it's like,
it does.
Good on them. Like I'm always happy to be wrong on this stuff.
It also had that risk of 3 different developers 10 years in production that it was just going to be an absolute shambles when it came out, and somehow it worked.
Them on that, actually. I've always defended them on that because there's effectively 2 games were developed, and one of them was scrapped about 5 years in. So I see that almost as like there's a cut-off point where they just started again. It just happens to share the same name and probably some assets, but
absolutely,
it's a new game. Yeah.
And to their credit, it seems like they've actually doubled down a bit, because I've been seeing ads for it in a lot of places where I wouldn't typically see kind of other game ads. So I think they have like put a bit of cash behind it, and yeah, seems paying off. I was wrong.
Yeah. It was almost like a well-timed release as well. It came out in the middle of any big titles. It kind of had a good 2-week period to itself, which I think it's flourished off the back of. And I guess in another decade's time, gents, we'll see Dead Island 3 finally ship out the doors. Maybe a little bit of a quicker turnaround time, this one.
A lot of people might have been looking at Jedi Fallen Order and going, I need something just to tide me over for a couple of weeks. And Dead Island 2, it's one of them games that I think, in a weird way, I think a lot of people wouldn't care if they never finished it. So it's like kind of very easily approachable. It's like, you know what, I can play this for a couple of weeks just to tide me over. It's just straight up kind of mindless violence fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got this more involved title in Jedi Fallen Order coming.
So, well, let's face it. If
Jedi Survivor,
if they came out after Jedi Survivor or anywhere near Zelda launching, it was commercial suicide. So they got out ahead of it, and to its benefit, it seems 1 million sold. Congratulations. One of the things we'll also have to compete with later on this year is Armored Core 6. From Software teased this at the Game Awards. It's a franchise that I don't think any of us have really ever dabbled in. August 25th, it's going to arrive on PlayStation 5, and they teased it with a gameplay reveal trailer showing kind of the ins and outs of what goes on with these big mech suits, featuring highly mobile and highly customizable mechas. The game will put players in a fast-paced battles where they make full use of offensive and defensive maneuvers on both land and in the air to overcome foes. To be the most successful and profitable mercenary of Rubicon 3, players must masterfully rapidly change combat distances, use environment for protective cover, and omnidirectional battles to overcome challenging enemies and situations. This is one that I just have no clue what it's going to be. I think some people are expecting like the Elden Ring of Armored Core games now, based on the last few entries from Software. But yeah, August 25th, a lot closer than I think a lot of people were expecting, considering there's Elden Ring DLC in the works, and again, Elden Ring didn't come out that long ago, so 25th of August.
From Software being very careful of the messaging here, they are straight up saying that this isn't a Soulsborne game.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're hardcore like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, don't expect one-for-one kind of gameplay sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
However, they have been also saying a lot of the stuff we've learned by making them games we've applied to basically rebooting the Armored Core series. But I think this is going to be the best-selling Armored Core game to date.
I think so as well.
This might be actually the one that really actually kickstarts, although it's weird because it's a sixth entry.
Mm-hmm.
But this might really kind of kickstart the Armored Core franchise properly as a mainstream title, because of the legacy of what From Software have done over the last like decade or so.
Yeah,
like I think they've developed a lot of From Software now have fans of that studio who will pick up anything they make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they've earned it. So
yeah, it's a lot of goodwill riding on this one, and yeah, Fires of Rubicon, August 25th, so not too long to wait.
Though, isn't it?
It is a cool name. It is a cool name. I don't know what the Rubicon is, but it's a cool name. Is it a desert? The Rubicon? Is that a desert?
I don't know. Is it the planet or something that they're on?
I have no idea. I guess we'll find out August 25th. And rounding out, final story for the week, Twisted Metal, the TV series coming to Peacock over in the United States, had a teaser artwork dropped earlier this week, and it also had a live action teaser drop with Anthony Mackie, of course, of Falcon and Winter Soldier fame. It's releasing in a full release series. I think it's all episodes are going to drop in once on 27th of July over in Peacock. I don't think they've any said where it's coming to in the UK. I'd imagine Sky is usually the one who picks up a lot of the US shows. Mm-hmm. But yeah, did you guys check out the trailer?
No.
I did, yeah.
What are your thoughts, Rob? So this, obviously, it's the game Twisted Metal doesn't really lend itself to much story. You've got a crazy clown in an ice cream truck wanting to kill people and weaponize vehicles. Where do you get off making a TV show with this core foundational content?
Like this guy in a car, his real name's Clarence, right? And like, it just looks a bit kind of, I don't know, strange. I don't really know what to think of it. I've seen like a lot of memes going around where it's like the Fast of Us and stuff like that.
Yeah. Let's face it, going straight to Peacock doesn't add the same credentials as HBO's Prestige does.
Yeah.
And the franchise of The Last of Us, no offense to Twisted Metal, but it also doesn't come with the same gravitas. Also, I think this is one where Sony just they basically sold the rights to whichever IP they're willing to give up themselves. And Peacock have went, we'll do it. And they've put money in Anthony Mackie. It's like seeing if he'll pull in enough star power. You know what? The least it can be is a fun laugh. I think if one thing happens each week on every episode that makes me giggle to myself or go like, yeah, okay, I guess. I've never really played that much of the Twisted Metal games, so yeah, give me some Fast and Furious chaos, I guess.
I love those games, but it just doesn't suit like a TV show in the slightest. There's like no story. You just drive around and then like,
which could be better for them in a way. They could just make it their own, and it's
yeah, but it could be a thing where it's like 9 hours of storytelling and like 1 hour of like action driving type of deal, you know. So I
think this is a show that needs to just lean into the chaos and into the action, just make it just make it a fun TV show. I have no expectation for this to be good, but if they can make it fun, then you can find your audience. But I think it's almost, don't try to make it more than what it should be. This isn't a Last of Us situation. You can't rely heavily on the narrative being told and the performance of the actors. You do need to kind of lean into the spectacle a bit.
It's an interesting one.
Can pull it off.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to say the least. If it goes kind of like all in Mad Max style, like post-apocalypse, because in the trailer the world looks like it's gone to shit, and Anthony Mackie's just having a bit of fun with it. So again, who knows? It's got some interesting people. Will Arnett's going to be voicing Sweet Tooth as well, so you've got the comedy chops coming in as well. Stephanie Beatrice, Tom Hayden, Church, Neve Campbell are also. The script's been worked on by Cobra Kai writer. So there's prestige coming along to the crew. Where that translates across, we'll have to wait until the 27th of July to find out. Here in the UK, probably December, depending on how quickly they pull the finger out and get it over to us. But we'll keep tabs on it. You never know. It could be fantastic. We obviously still have Gran Turismo movie in the works coming out. We've got all the other shows. There's a Horizon Netflix series. Who knows? Is there anything quickly off the bat you guys would want to see adapted from PlayStation's background into a show or movie? Off the top of your heads?
Spider-Man. There's not been enough Spider-Man.
Give me more Spider-Mans. We actually touched on it last week, didn't we, Richie? Saying that there's rumours that Pixel Opus, who did Concrete Genie, are working on a smaller Spider-Man title with the art style of Into the Spider-Verse, Rob, which was basically like a smaller, like maybe a 10-hour story, but in that world to coincide with the movie release. And I was like, that could work. I'd give me all the Spider-Mans. I'm happy for more.
I don't think it'll happen, but The Order. I think there's a great TV series to be told in that world. Like a truly great thing with the cast of characters, the narrative that's going on there. That could be amazing. But I think Sony have just kind of called time on it, which is a shame.
Big shame indeed. And speaking of calling time, we'll have to call time on this week's episode of Talking the PS, episode number 46, where we round up all the PlayStation news for your listening or viewing pleasure on here. youtube.com/Helix Plays Games. We'll be back, of course, later on this week with another live stream. No doubt checking out Redfall, which is released straight onto Xbox and Game Pass for you to play. We'll be checking it out with you, the wonderful community out there who supports us and support us all the way to 250,000 views here on the channel, all them podcast downloads and support. The wonderful Helix Heroes who support us that extra little bit further. If you've watched the show right to this point, I encourage you to click join down below. From as little as 99p, you get this show early, possibly the Lunar Listening Podcast early, stickers, badges next to your name as well. It's been a great show. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. My name's been Chris.
I've been Richie.
And I've been Rob.
We've been Talking the PS. And remember, everyone, play it wherever makes you the happiest. We'll see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.